So, dividing polynomials using long division. This is so much fun. I just can't contain myself at how much fun this is. Now, hey, this is actually very simple. Once you see what the process is, perfectly fine. Now I'm going to walk through this one, and then we're just going to keep going back and forth. So I recommend making sure that you write this down. So here we go. Now we're going to divide. And when we set up the division, we are going to use the long division way of doing things, okay? We aren't going to use a little subtraction sign with a dot top and bottom, or are we going to use a fraction? So 3x is going to go on the outside. You need to make sure that this stuff here is in order. So I got 3, 2, 1, and none. So everything is in order by the exponent, ascending order. So that gives me 12x cubed minus 6x squared plus 5x plus 4. Now, what we are going to be doing is basically asking ourselves the question, what do I have to multiply 3x by to get to the first term? So, what must I multiply 3x by to get to 12x to the third power? Well, 3 times 4 is 12, right? And I've got 1x, so I need 2 more. Now, I'm going to put this as 4x squared. Depending upon the textbooks that you see, sometimes they don't do it this way, sometimes they do line them up, sometimes they just do something else. But I always like trying to keep things lined up by the exponent on the variable. So 4x squared times 3x is 12x cubed. Now, what we would do here, just like when you do regular long division, you multiply and then you subtract to see what's left. And when we subtract, what we're going to be looking at is just simply changing the signs. So this goes to negative 12x cubed minus 12x cubed. That disappears, correct? Then we bring the next one down. So we get minus 6x squared. So now I repeat my process again. What must I multiply 3 by to get to negative x squared, or negative 6x squared? Well, I need a negative 2, and I need another x. So my x's are here. I'm going to write down minus 2x. X's are all lined up. So negative 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. X times x is x squared. Now we change the signs again. So this goes to plus. That wipes out. This 5x comes down. So what must I multiply 3x by to get to 5x? Well, do I have any x's that I need? The answer is no. Now, I need a 5 on top, correct? So I am going to multiply through by a positive number, and the positive number that I am going to multiply through by is 5/3. Why 5/3? If this is 3 over 1, if I go and take my 3x, multiply it by 5 over 3, what happens? Well, 3's cancel, and I would be just left with my 5x. Now, if I go and subtract, change the sign, that wipes out, and what's left? 4. Now, there's no x's there. There's no way that I'm going to go and do this. So what we're going to do is, just like when we would do regular long division back in the day, there might be a number left over. So that means that we are going to have the following: plus 4 over 3x. We just have a remainder. So there's the process that we're going to do. Do you see how it repeats itself over and over and over and over again? So what I'm going to do here is I am going to give you a couple minutes, and I want you to give it a try with this example. See what you come up with. All right, here I go. 3x is going to go out on the front. Set up the division. 12x cubed minus 9x squared right there. 237x plus 40. Say what? Okay, so start off the question again. What do I got to multiply 3x by to get the 12x squared, or 12x cubed? Well, that would be 4x squared. So 4x times 3x gives me 12x cubed. Change the sign, subtract. Now we bring down the minus 9x squared. Repeat the process. What do I got to multiply 3 by to get to negative 9? Well, that would be a negative 3. And I have to multiply by an x to get to the x squared. Minus 3x. So negative 3 times 3 is negative 9. X times x gives me the x squared. Now, change signs. That disappears. Now we bring down the negative 237x. So 237, is that divisible by 3? More than likely. So you'd end up having to take your calculator and just figure out that we get 237 divided by 3, and we end up with 79. So I need 79. I need it to be negative, so this is going to be minus, oops, sorry. It's going to be minus 79. Okay. So I've already got an x sitting there. So that puts bad 79. So we know that multiplies out to be negative 237x. So change signs. Add, cancels out, brings down the 40. Nothing more that I can do. I have a remainder. So we end up with this 4x squared minus 3x minus 79 plus 40 over 3x. Very similar to what you would normally do when you're dividing using long division. All right. Of course, we have to move it up to the next step, right? This is generally what we end up using. This is for polynomial division, where we're dividing one polynomial by at least another binomial or larger. So we're going to go through the same exact process. First thing that I am going to do is write down what I'm supposed to divide it by. X plus 4. Want to make sure that I have everything written down here, so that's x to the 4th plus 2x cubed minus 13x squared minus 38x minus 24. Now we are ready to begin. And we are going to start with exactly the same process as we did before. What must I multiply x by to get to x to the 4th power? Well, that would be x cubed. So x cubed multiplied by x gives me x to the 4th. However, I've still got a plus 4 there, don't I? So I am also going to have to multiply it by x cubed. So I will have plus 4x cubed. So it's kind of like the distributive property in that whatever I multiply here by, both terms get multiplied by it. So x times x, or x cubed times x, gives me x to the 4th. X times 4 gives me 4x cubed. Does that seem easy enough as you're looking at this? Now, change the signs. So when I subtract, like I said, I change the sign. So this becomes negative. This becomes negative because it was positive. So if I look at this, x to the 4th minus x to the 4th disappears, yes? Then 2x cubed minus 4x cubed leaves me a negative 2x cubed. Bring down the next term, minus 13x squared. That just comes straight down. Now, just like before, we are going to ask the same question. What must I multiply x by to get to negative 2x cubed? Well, I know it's got to be a negative. I know it's got to be a 2. And I know it's going to end up being x squared because I already have 1x and I need 3. So now the process repeats all over again. Negative 2x squared times x gives me negative 2x cubed. Negative 2x squared times a positive 4 gives me negative 8x squared. So far, so good? Now, change signs. So this goes to positive because it was negative. This was negative, and it becomes positive. That's why we use it, change the signs rather than the subtract, like we would normally do for division. So negative 2x cubed, positive 2x cubed, wipe each other out. Now, if you've messed something up and these two things don't match, then you got to go back and double check your multiplication. Maybe you chose the wrong value. These two must always match, first two. So this cancels out. I have negative 13x squared plus 8x squared. So that leaves you with a minus 5x squared. Now comes the next term, minus 38x. Repeat the process all over again. What must I multiply x by to get to negative 5x squared? Well, I know I need a negative 5 and I need an x. So that gives me negative 5x squared minus 20x. Yes? Change the sign. This goes to positive, that goes to positive. Negative 5x squared, positive 5x squared, cancels each other out. This brings me down to a negative 18x. Do I have another term to bring down? Yep. 24 comes down. Oops, too far. So negative 24 comes down and I have negative 24. So what must I multiply x by to get to a negative 18x? That would be negative 18. So negative 18 times x gives me negative 18x. Negative 18 times 4 gives me what? 76, you say? 72. But that is going to be a negative times a positive, so that turns out to be plus 72. Negative, sorry. Getting ahead of myself. So now, next thing I have to do, change the signs. That goes to plus, that goes to plus, and I end up getting that cancels out. Negative 24, positive 72, so that is going to give me what? 48. But it will be positive 48. Now, I have a number down here all by its lonesome. I have no more to go and bring down to divide out. So that means that I end up with plus 48 over x plus 4. That is the whole process. Questions about any one of the steps that I've done on there? It's really one step that you just keep repeating over and over and over and over. So, good. With that in mind, I'm going to give you a couple of minutes, and I want you to go through, divide this one up. All righty. Well, I'm going to let it rip and see what you think. See if it works out. So I got x minus 3 2x cubed. You're missing a few things. Okay. So I got everything written down. First thing it's going to be is going to be 6x cubed. I get 6x to the fourth, 18x cubed. Change signs. So that gives me 5x cubed minus 34x squared. Now I'm going to need plus 5x squared. So that gives me 5x squared minus 15x squared Change the signs. And we end up with, let's see, it's going to be 20 or 19 x squared. Bring down the next term, plus 207x. Again, multiply it out and see what we get. We're going to need 19x. 19x gives me 19x squared. Minus 19 times 3 is going to give me, what is it, 57? So, am I right so far? So this should end up being, you said 57. Subtract. Change the signs. I didn't write that one out right. Sorry. So we end up with 257x minus 180. So now I've got to multiply it by what? And a lot of times that when you start getting these super large numbers in here, it's always a good idea to go back and double check to make sure that you haven't gone and miscalculated something somewhere along the line. So, oh, this is, yeah, that's supposed to be 5x cubed. So just to make sure that I got everything right here so far. So everything's looking good. Numbers are getting large, but that's just the way it is. So what do I got to multiply x by to get to 264? That would end up being just plus 264. So 264 times x goes to 264x. And minus and a plus, so it's going to be negative. And again, calculator, we got 264 times 3, so we end up with 792. Change the signs, subtract, add, and we end up with 612. So, in the end, we end up with is plus 612 over x minus 3. Just follow the pattern and we don't have to worry about it too much. But like I said, sometimes these numbers just get big and ugly. Always go back and double check. That is impossible to do this without writing it out like this. There is another method, but we're not going to go there. That one's quicker, a little bit more complicated. The answer is sitting right there. 6x cubed plus 5x squared plus 19x plus 264 plus 612 over x minus 3. That's because you didn't write it out. So, give it another try. Here we go. Now this one's going to turn out a little bit different for us. I think if I'm looking at it correctly. So, now I've got x squared plus 11. Problem is I'm missing something now, aren't I? Because we have to have everything here, we need to make sure that we have all the bits and pieces. So I just can't use x squared plus 11. I am going to have to use x squared plus 0x plus 11. You have to, whatever the highest exponent is, you have to have all of the terms all the way down. So here, I've got 4x to the fourth minus x cubed. Is there an x squared term there? And if there isn't an x squared term, we have to put it in. Well, what value represents nothing? 0. So we put in plus 0x squared minus 11x minus 484. Okay. Now we can start the division. I got squared, 1, and none. 4, 3, 2, 1, none. Everything is there. So we start the process all over again. What must I multiply by x squared to get to 4x to the fourth? Well, that would be 4x squared. Because it's squared, I want to keep them lined up. So now 4x squared gets multiplied by x squared to get 4x to the fourth. And it gets multiplied by 0x. So that's going to give me plus 0x cubed. And it's going to get multiplied by the 11. So that'll be plus 44x squared. So everything that was there was multiplied by the 4x squared, just like in the last one. Everything was multiplied. So change the sign. That goes negative, that goes negative, that goes negative. So 4x to the fourth minus 4x to the fourth disappears. Negative x cubed minus 0x cubed, well, I have a negative x cubed. Over here, I will have negative 44x squared. Over here, I will be bringing this one down to minus 11x. So, repeat the process. What must I multiply x squared by to get to negative x cubed? Well, I need an x. So that'll be a minus x at that. So negative x times x squared gives me negative x cubed. Negative x times 0x gives me 0x squared. X times 11 is going to give me negative 11x. So, change the signs. That goes to addition, subtraction, addition. So, now what I've got is negative 44x squared. This disappears, so that's plus 0x. And this comes down as plus 484. And if I would look at that, then it's not going to be plus, it's going to be minus, sorry. Okay. Once again, we ask the question, what must I multiply x by to get to 44? Or negative 44, so it's going to be a minus 44. So negative 44 times x squared is going to be negative 44x squared. 44 times 0x is going to be plus 0x. 44 times 11 is going to be a negative 484. Now, change the signs. This goes to addition. I can go to subtraction. This goes to addition. Now, when I go through and do this, negative 44x squared plus 44x squared disappears. 0x, 0x disappears. Negative 484, positive 484. I end up with 0. So, the answer for this one is right here. 4x squared minus x minus 44. That is exactly what it is. Now, when we end up with a 0 on it, that means that this original polynomial up here is divisible by this. It's also classified as a factor of it. Okay. Questions?